here when the Americans really wanted to, let's say, weaken him or take him out of power, but Sarkozy convinced back then the US that he wants to try for the last time. He invited him to Paris on the French National Day. They rolled him a red carpet treatment. I mean, if you went to his hotel in Paris, they were like packed with journalists. And then you have world leaders. They didn't have as many journalists that Assad had because they wanted to persuade him. They wanted to give him the impression that he's an important person, that he just needs to shake hands with Ehud Olmert. And then they put him on the podium. It was so planned that so obvious, it's caught on camera, how everyone basically, from the foreign minister of France, from Hamad bin Jassim back then, from Ban Ki-moon, they were all first convincing or bringing the Ehud Olmert closer to Bashar. And then when Bashar sees that Olmert is coming to him, he turns his back and he runs away from the podium somewhere far away. And this is when, according to my sources, that the West, let's say collective West, were fed up with Bashar, that they want to remove him. But here's the question. Now, he didn't shake hands with Ehud Olmert, although they were in indirect talks multiple times for a peace agreement. Was the issue of shaking hands or recognition of Israel or supporting the Palestinian armed struggle and the Lebanese resistance, let's say armed struggle against Israel, a matter of principle for him, or because this was also benefiting him to consolidate his power? You know, in Syria, the issue of Palestine was always central. Like once we open our eyes, they feed us this with our milk, you know. So I also, now that Assad is gone, I also want to understand that at some point, Assad didn't compromise, and this was not in favor of Syria, like even against the interests of Syria. He was not flexible in certain things. I'm not saying he should have shaken hands with Ehud Olmert. All I'm saying is his father in the 90s, when the Americans asked him to participate in the Iraq war to liberate Kuwait, back then he saw Soviet Union is gone. I have to be more flexible in this case because the Americans are the superpower. But now America again is superpower. Russia is not the Soviet Union. They have good ties with Israel. And Iran has shown to the world that their interests and their national security, of course, comes of priority. But Assad, until the last moment in October 2024, when the Jordanian foreign minister came to Damascus and told him, in November, there is going to be a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, and we expect you to participate in this as a partner, which means you have to seal the borders, you have to cut the supply chains to Hezbollah, and the Hezbollah is already being weakened at the current moment. When you do that, the Americans will reopen ties with you. And he rejected it. And only 3 weeks later, the attack of HTS happened. So I'm really interested, what was he standing on? Like, was this a principle? Was this an interest? Why all the time he said no?
Look, the short answer is because he could never say yes and stay in power. The short answer is that if Jolani today is allowing the Israelis to occupy as much land as they want in southern Syria, he is not retaliating in any way, etc., etc. If Assad had shaken hands in 2008, his relationship with Hezbollah would be in a disastrous position, and he would probably end up being asked to retake Lebanon by defeating Hezbollah, including by besieging it and working with the Israelis. So there wasn't just the idea of a handshake. There was what happens next, because part of any agreement is going to involve dismantling Hezbollah. How does he deal with an unstable Iraq on one side and an unstable Lebanon on the other without Syria itself becoming destabilized? With major internal dissent. This is thinking about 2008. Okay?
Yes.
If the Lebanese want Bashar gone because of Hariri, because of the killing of Kamal Jumblat, because of the Christian leaders that were killed in Lebanon by the Assad family, because all of that. And in Iraq, there's a double insurgency, a jihadi insurgency, or a Sunni jihadi insurgency, and a Shia jihadi insurgency. How does he survive if he makes peace with the Israelis? He would have to fight both on behalf of others in the same way that Saddam was sent to fight Iran on behalf of the Gulf and on behalf of the other Arabs. And he couldn't sell that kind of story successfully to his public and to his security officials and to his army. In 2006, you declare a major victory, and then he made the speech, I think, where he called the Arab leaders Ashbah Rijal, half men. You know? Then he shakes hands with the Israelis. It wasn't going to fly. He couldn't sell it internally. And as an Alawite, he was the last person who could make peace. On the question of Palestine, only the Sunnis can make peace. And even then, I'm not convinced that they can or that they all can. Even that, I don't find it very tenable. But for an Alawite to do it, it would bring about the wrath of every radical Sunni in the world against this regime, which ended up incidentally happening anyway in 2011. In 2024, he was trying to execute some kind of turn gently. So he was trying to put distance between himself and the Iranians. And he didn't allow Hezbollah to use Syria for the war. So he tried to maintain neutrality. But that was precisely the problem, in the sense that for Hezbollah, what ended up becoming the big military problem, which we can speculate on, was that they didn't fully commit to the war on October 8th. Against the advice of Hezbollah's military commanders, who said to Nasrallah that you can't have a support front. You can have a war or a peace, but you can't half-ass it. You can't go halfway. So because the whole resistance axis couldn't jump and fight in a truly committed manner, which, by the way, when Muhammad Daif, I think it was, issued his statement on 7 October, he said, everybody come in now. In the Palestinian territories, in the West Bank, in the 48 territories, in Lebanon, in Syria, now is the time for the Great War. But nobody joined, and they ended up being taken out one by one.
Yes.
So the problem for the whole resistance axis was that they couldn't commit. When push came to shove, when they were called, they had nothing. They weren't willing. It turns out that it was just hot air and rhetoric.